The service was full, and so we have a little less time than usual at this. So I'm going to make a start of it, and as people get their coffee, they will come on in, and we'll build the group a little bit. This is our second forum in the series over Lent, Christ's Own Forever, Lent Renewal at St. Paul's. And as you've probably heard, we're reflecting on the Baptismal Covenant in order to clarify our relationship with God and our following of Christ, how we actually follow Christ in our lives. And for this forum, I'm going to reflect ever so briefly on an aspect of the Baptismal Covenant, and then there'll be some prompts for you to do some writing to engage your own reflection. So you will do the majority of the work for yourself at this time, and then you'll break off into small groups where you can share with each other what has come up for you in the presentation and your reflection. So same as always. The theme for this week is the sacrament of the Eucharist and prayer, because in the very first baptismal promise we make, we promise to continue in the breaking of the bread and in the prayers of the church. To continue in the breaking of the bread and in the prayers. And I hope that when you leave this forum, you at least have a sense that something holy is happening in the Eucharist that God desires me to be a part of, and I want to attend on that. And I hope that you leave curious, a little curious about the life of prayer, that it could not be some silly or a childish thing or just asking God for stuff, but it can be a way of engaging God with all the passion and the worries and the delights of adult life and asking for God's help in finding your way and in your caring for the things of your life, finding God's will for yourself and responding to that with more of yourself. That it's a way of being fully alive by bringing your life to God and hearing God's word back. Okay, so ever so briefly again, because I want you to have time to reflect and to share, when we promise to continue in the breaking of the bread, we are promising to continue in the regular and disciplined and committed celebration of the Holy Eucharist together. So after we believe what the apostles taught, that was last week, the first thing we promise to do is to continue to gather as a community around the altar and to celebrate the Holy Eucharist, the breaking of the bread together. And that's really as it should be, because you can do almost everything we do in church somewhere else, right? You can have great fellowship down at the pub. You can have great learning in extension programs. You can learn about spiritual things all over the place. You can help other people in countless ways. You can even experience God in nature and so on and so on. But the distinctive and unique thing that we do as a church is the Eucharist. You don't do that anywhere else. That is our secret sauce. That is our thing. That's what we do. We all come together as a community, right? And then we hear God's word. And then we reflect on that a little bit. That's called the sermon. And then we profess our faith. We offer prayers. And then in the offering of the bread and the wine, we're offering God ourselves and kind of giving up our lives to God so that God can give us more of God's life, so that your life and God's life can come closer together and move more in sync. That is the fundamental, primary thing we do as church. We do Eucharist together. And I'll just point out that Jesus said, "Do this in memory of me." It's one of the things he told us to go about doing. For me, this has a whole lot of meaning, because when Jesus of Nazareth was walking around Palestine, doing stuff, what did he do? He got people together. Some of them were sinful, some of them were apparently virtuous, and he got them together from all walks of life, and they all gathered around, and he would feed them, and he would teach them, and he'd give them his presence. So in a weird way, what we do here 3 times on Sunday is what Jesus did with people. He got them together and taught and fed. It's like it is the Jesus thing. And for me, the Eucharistic rite is profoundly relational. It's not just about learning stuff, like learning about God or having a nice kind of moment together where we all feel kind of nice and connected. It's really about coming before like the truth of ourselves and the holiness of God and offering ourselves over and receiving God's life back. It's about that living connection with the divine, with the holy, as it touches our life, with mercy, with kindness, with wholeness, with courage. It's that relational thing. So I love the Eucharist. And I'm glad that in our church it has become what we do every single Sunday. Now, we have such little time, so I want to just ask you, if you all have your pads and a pencil, if you've heard all of what I've said about the Eucharist, the readings, the prayers, the communion, if someone were to ask you, what does the Eucharist mean to you, what would you say? What does this mean to you, this thing we do every Sunday? What does it mean? How would you explain it if you want to a child? If someone said, what do we do when we receive the body and the blood? What's happening? How would you share that with the child? So just write a bit about the Eucharist for yourself. We'll take a few minutes. What is the Eucharist to you? As people are still writing, I'll give you some more time there. There's a famous sermon by a monk named Dom Gregory Dix from Nashton Abbey in England in 1930s, 40s, I think. And it's this meditation on, was any commandment ever fulfilled more than this one? Do this in memory of me. And he goes on this long litany of like on the beaches at Dunkirk, on the nursing home, for the birth of a child, for the death of a father, it goes on being celebrated across the world, and it's very moving. So you can look up Dom Gregory Dix and the Eucharist, if you would like. There's folks who are coming in. It's great you're here. And we're just reflecting on the Eucharist right now. Come on in. And I'm going to move on now and talk a little bit about the prayers of the church. I love how it says we'll continue in the prayers. Because we often think of praying as something that you do by yourself, right? You're just going to pray because you want that new Buick that looks so nice. Anybody ever do that? Nobody's prayed for a Buick. How odd. But It's something you pray for, a need you bring. But just think about this. The church is one body. The church is the body of Jesus, and there are billions of us in the world. And as all the billions of us are asking God to help with this situation, or giving thanks to God for a blessing, or wondering about God's will for this area in our lives together, it is this kind of this cosmic, worldwide, that's global, we'll say, offering up of the whole world through the lives of individual Christians praying to God. And so the duty here is to bring your life situation, your experiences, everything before God, to join that high priestly body of the church as it offers to God the whole world. Your job, your baptismal promise, is to bring your life into that, your needs, your concerns, your desires, things you want to be grateful for, and to surrender yourself to God's will. That's what it means to be part of the church's life of prayer. It is like billions of Christians praying for this world, and you're going to consciously accept the responsibility to bring your life into that one praying body. And so it may be that you're just praying for Aunt Susan, or you're giving thanks for a sunny day, or you're asking for help to know what you should do with your life. But in doing that, you are bringing that part of your life before God with all the other Christians all over the world who are doing the same. And that, for me, is a very compelling vision. And there's all kinds of ways I could talk about this more. And I wish we could just lock the doors of the church and just talk about it all day, because prayer for me is the thing. It is the sweetness of life and the goodness and the wholeness of life. Let me just say that what happens when we have a life of prayer and we come before God every day, our lives are opened to God's word, and these two realities become porous to each other. So God's life and our life just become a little bit closer and move more in and out of each other. And that feels like I have depth, I have dignity, I have something that sustains me in my living and breathing. I wish we could talk more about it. Let me just give you one prompt, though. How do you pray, and why? How do you pray, and why? Do you do the daily office, morning and evening prayer, online or by yourself? Do you do meditation and yoga to sort of open your bodily being before God in silence and love? Do you talk to God throughout the day? Do you give thanks every day? In the good old days, when I was in my 20s in Anglo-Catholic Wisconsin, they always said, you got to go to Eucharist, you got to do your contemplative prayer, and you got to recite daily morning and evening prayer. And the priests actually signed a covenant with the bishop saying they would do that every day. Not Eucharist, but those are the good old wholesome 1980s. But how do you pray, and why?